Some people are afraid of the dark, but the truth is, the dark has never hurt anyone. It's what's standing in it, smiling, that you need to worry about. Welcome back to Dark Scares. Tonight, we're going somewhere that will make you think twice about the people living right next door to you. Tonight, we're going to Millhaven, Ohio. Population 4,212. A town where everybody knew everybody, where nobody locked their doors, where the neighborhood barbecue every 4th of July was the social event of the year, and where, for nearly a decade, a killer lived quietly in a yellow house on Birchwood Lane, and nobody suspected a thing. This is the case of Russell Crane. Russell Crane was born in 1969 in Dayton, Ohio, the second of 3 children. His childhood, on the surface, was ordinary. His father worked at a packaging plant. His mother stayed home. They went to church on Sundays. They ate dinner together most nights. Neighbors who remembered the family described them as decent, unremarkable people. But those who knew Russell closely as a child described something else. A boy who was unusually controlled, who never lost his temper, not because he was patient, but because he seemed to feel very little. A boy who watched other people the way a scientist watches a specimen. Curious, detached, measuring. His teachers called him gifted. His classmates found him unsettling without being able to say exactly why. He graduated high school in 1987, got an associate's degree in business administration, drifted through a series of jobs: insurance adjuster, property manager, used car salesman. He was good at all of them. He was good at reading people, at figuring out what they needed to hear, at making them feel comfortable. He moved to Millhaven in 1998, bought the yellow house on Birchwood Lane, and within 6 months, everyone in the neighborhood knew his name. Russell Crane was the kind of neighbor you thanked God for. He shoveled your driveway without being asked. He washed your house when you were out of town. He organized the neighborhood watch. He coached Little League for 3 seasons. His laugh was big and easy, and when he talked to you, he made you feel like you were the only person in the world. He was 49 years old when they found the first body. Her name was Diane Lowell. She was 41, a nurse, a mother of 2, recently divorced, and she had moved to Birchwood Lane in the spring of 2007. Russell Crane was the first person to welcome her. He showed up at her door with a casserole and a list of recommended local businesses he had typed up, printed, and put in a clear plastic sleeve. Diane told her sister about it on the phone that night. She said, "My new neighbor is either the nicest man alive or a serial killer." She laughed when she said it. She disappeared 11 months later, in April of 2008. Her ex-husband reported her missing when she didn't show up to drop off the kids on a Sunday afternoon. Her car was in the driveway. Her phone was inside the house. Her coffee maker had been left on. The investigation was immediate but fruitless. Diane Lowell had no known enemies. The divorce had been difficult but not violent. Her ex-husband was quickly cleared. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood. Everyone was cooperative. Everyone was horrified. Everyone pointed to the same person as the most reliable source of information about Diane, Russell Crane, who had become, over 11 months, one of her closest friends on the street. Russell told detectives he had last seen Diane on the Friday evening before she disappeared. She had waved to him from her porch. He thought she seemed fine. He was devastated, he said. Just devastated. He helped organize the neighborhood search. Millhaven is the kind of town where a woman going missing stays in the local conversation for a long time. But time passes. Life moves on. The case went cold by 2010. And then, in 2011, a man named Gary Fitch vanished. Gary was 53, a retired schoolteacher who had moved to Birchwood Lane after his wife passed away. He and Russell Crane had become close. Fishing trips, Sunday football, regular dinners. Gary's adult daughter, Melissa, had always found Russell slightly off-putting, though she couldn't explain why. She told her father once that something about his eyes never matched his smile. Her father told her she was being uncharitable. Gary Fitch went to meet Russell for dinner one Thursday evening in September 2011. He never came home. Russell told police he hadn't seen Gary that evening, that Gary had called to cancel, said he wasn't feeling well. There was no record of such a call on Gary's phone. Russell said Gary must have used a different number, or maybe he was misremembering. He was very sorry. He was beside himself. He attended the vigil for Gary Fitch. He stood in the front row. Melissa Fitch did not let it go. She was 31 years old, worked in insurance, and had the particular kind of tenacious grief that refuses to organize itself into acceptance. For 2 years after her father disappeared, she kept files. She kept notes. She cross-referenced everything she could find. And she found Diane Lowell. Same street, same social circle, same last person seen with Russell Crane. She brought what she had to the Millhaven Police Department in 2013. The detective she met with, a man named Frank Ostrowski, listened carefully. He thanked her. He told her the connection was worth noting. And privately, he thought she might be onto something. But what she had was not evidence. It was pattern, suspicion, a feeling. He opened a quiet inquiry. He did not approach Russell Crane. Not yet. What Ostrowski needed was physical evidence. And to get it, he needed a reason to look at Russell Crane's property. He got one in the summer of 2014, and it came from the most unexpected place. A contractor named Pete Dawes had been hired by the city to assess drainage issues along Birchwood Lane. As part of that work, he needed access to the rear easement behind a stretch of properties, a long, narrow strip of land behind the backyards, owned by the county, overgrown and unmaintained. Pete Dawes was working alone on a Tuesday afternoon in July. He pushed through the overgrowth behind Russell Crane's property and found, partially concealed beneath years of accumulated brush and debris, a section of disturbed earth that had, at some point, been covered with concrete pavers, cracked now, sinking unevenly, weeds forcing through the gaps. It didn't look like a garden feature. It was too methodical, too deliberate. Pete Dawes wasn't sure what he was looking at, but he'd worked construction for 25 years, and he knew what covered ground looked like. He called it in. When the forensic team excavated the area behind 14 Birchwood Lane, they found 2 sets of human remains. Both had been wrapped, buried deep, and covered with the concrete pavers, a cold, patient, permanent arrangement. Dental records confirmed the identities within 72 hours. Diane Lowell, Gary Fitch. Russell Crane was arrested on July 22, 2014, as he was washing his car in his driveway. He looked up when the police cruisers pulled in, and witnesses reported that for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, something crossed his face that wasn't surprise. Something that looked almost like relief. Then the smile came back. He asked the arresting officers if he could finish rinsing off the hood. The search of Russell Crane's home took 4 days. What investigators found was not the chaotic mess of a disorganized killer. Everything was neat. Everything was labeled. There were financial records for both victims, copies of Diane's mortgage statements, Gary's pension documentation. Investigators believe Crane had been studying them. There was a locked cabinet in the basement that contained personal items belonging to both victims, items that had never been reported missing because no one knew they were gone. There were also items that could not be connected to Diane Lowell or Gary Fitch, items that belonged to people whose identities took months to establish, items that pointed to 2 additional victims. A woman who had gone missing from a neighboring county in 2004, for years before Diane Lowell, and a man whose disappearance had been classified as a voluntary absence in 2009. For victims in total, possibly more. Russell Crane's trial began in March 2016. The prosecution described him as a predator who selected victims systematically. People who were isolated, recently changed in circumstance, newly arrived, or newly alone. People who were grateful for his attention and therefore vulnerable to it. He was not a stranger to his victims. He was their friend. The defense attempted to challenge the forensic chain of evidence. They argued that the rear easement was county land, that anyone could have accessed it. The jury was unconvinced. Russell Crane was convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder in May 2016. He was sentenced to life without parole. He maintained his composure throughout the sentencing. He nodded at the judge as if acknowledging a business decision. He did not look at the families. Melissa Fitch sat in the front row of that courtroom for every single day of the trial. When the verdict was read, she did not cry. People around her were weeping, strangers, journalists, other family members. Melissa sat very still and stared straight ahead. She gave a brief statement to the press afterward. She said her father was a kind and trusting man, and that his trust had been used against him, and that she hoped no one watching would ever mistake kindness in a stranger for safety. She said, "He chose my dad because my dad was good. That's what made him easy. Don't be afraid to ask questions about the people who are too nice. The ones who never seem to need anything back." Russell Crane is currently held at the Chillicothe Correctional Institution in Ohio. He is 55 years old. He has given one interview since his incarceration, a 40-minute conversation with a true crime journalist in 2019. In it, he was charming, articulate, and cooperative. He discussed the weather in Ohio. He discussed his reading habits. He discussed how much he had enjoyed living on Birchwood Lane. He did not discuss the victims. The yellow house on Birchwood Lane was sold in 2017. The new owners repainted it gray. The Neighborhood Watch program was quietly discontinued. The 4th of July barbecues still happen, but people say it's not quite the same. Something settled into that street that doesn't wash out. The rear easement has been cleared and maintained by the county ever since. Some of the neighbors leave flowers at the fence line on the anniversaries. They don't put up a sign. They don't need one. Everyone on that street knows what happened there, and they will not forget. That was the case of Russell Crane, the smiling neighbor of Birchwood Lane. If this case shook you, it should. Because the scariest thing about Russell Crane isn't that he existed. It's that he was invisible for 16 years. Share this video if it got under your skin. Subscribe to Dark Scares for a new case every week. And stay safe out there, because sometimes the danger already knows your name.